आऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश्शैतानिर्रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन व सामीन। आप देख रहे हैं प्रोग्राम तज्जिया इम्तियाज़ नकवी के साथ। Today I have with me in the Bradford Hidayat studio one of the well-known and renowned politician who is not only known in the UK, all over the world. A brief introduction. I don't have to give introduction in the detail because he is a well-known person. He is contesting election in Bradford West, where he won a by-election in 2012, and he is been the parliamentarian for the last 30 years. So we have a very short time today. He has to go because he is very busy. Election is just on his doorstep, and he will have to attend other meetings. So very short time, and we'll try to take some calls as well. My other guest next to George is Arshad Mahmood.
Arshad Ali.
Arshad Ali, who is the election agent, George Galloway's Respect Party's election agent, and with me, Nisar Naqvi, who is one of the analysts on Tajzia. So first of all, welcome George and Arshad and Nisar Naqvi, all of you, especially George Galloway, the leader of the Respect Party. Thank you very much for coming, and this is the second time you came onto the ITV.
It was my good luck in my by-election victory to be interviewed by you, a respected man like you.
Thank you. Thank you. We don't have a long time. I know there are many callers waiting to make calls as well. Tell us a little bit about your election campaign. You are contesting general election where you've won the by-election in 2012. Yes. How optimistic are you to retain your seat in this general election?
Well, in democratic elections, there's no place for optimism or pessimism. We fight for every vote until the very last moment. My record over the 3 years that I've been here speaks for itself, but if it doesn't speak for itself, I'm ready to speak for it. And my record over 30 years almost in Parliament and more than 40 years in politics, I hope also speaks for itself. I've got the experience and by the grace of God, some ability to make good use of the parliamentary platform, not just for Bradford West, though principally for Bradford West, but also for the Ummah as a whole, which I've been doing for all of my life. It's quite likely that no party will have a majority in the new parliament, which is really tailor-made for me, because it means that every day, every night, every debate will matter, every speech will matter, every negotiation will matter. And if the government is depending on my vote, and the opinion polls look like they might be, then they'll have to deliver a raft of pledges to Bradford and also one to the world. 5 Bradford conditions and 1 international condition. If Ed Miliband asks me next weekend to vote him into Downing Street, my answer will be only if you and the British government immediately recognize the state of Palestine, because the Parliament has already done that and it's time for the government to implement it. So that and my 5 Bradford demands, I know this is a worldwide television station, they're quite local, I won't go into them in detail, but a hung Parliament is perfect for me, because by the grace of God I can speak, I can debate, I can argue, I can make interventions, and I don't think that any of my opponents are in the same league as me on that.
You had one and only seat in the previous parliament. How many seats are you expecting to win in this general election?
Well, I'm going tomorrow to Halifax, which is next to Bradford, and where we have a candidate, Councillor Asma Javed, who is a candidate that is someone to be proud of. She's in English parlance, she's a battle axe. She's a very powerful woman, a solicitor, an outstanding figure. We're hopeful of doing very well there. We're standing in 2 seats in Birmingham, in Yardley and in Hall Green. and also 1 or 2 in London, the South Coast, and so on. I don't know how many we'll have. It's the same answer as the answer I gave you about my own seat. We don't take anything for granted, but we fight for every vote.
Why should people vote your party?
Well, they will know the failings of the other parties. I don't have to work hard to prove that. They are Tweedledee, Tweedledum, Tweedledee and a half. They all stand for the same things. They all support the same wars. They all support the same economic policies of austerity, making the poor people pay for the mistakes and the crimes even of the richest people. We stand for the opposite. We are the ghost of Labour's past. We are what Labour used to be. In that sense, we are the real Labour Party. And that goes for international issues just as much as it goes for local issues.
Yeah, I have so many questions, but you don't have enough time to answer all of the questions.
I understand.
We have NHS, we have education, we have PIP, we have a 0-hour contract, many other questions that are relevant to the UK community. But today, I think I will ask you about NHS. What is your policy on NHS? And then we'll talk.
Well, we're against the privatisation of it for a start. It was Labour that began the privatisation of the National Health Service, and the Conservatives have continued it, actually to within 1 percentage point. So they both privatised the National Health Service to 1 percentage point of difference between the two. We're against all privatisation. Right. We believe that the National Health Service has to be a public service. There is no room for profit in the health system. There's no room for people being able to purchase better health than others who are unable to purchase it. I give you an example. I hurt my ankle playing football, which isn't bad at the age of 60. Just 5 weeks ago in Manningham in the back courts, I went to the Royal Infirmary, the BRI, Bradford Royal Infirmary, and they gave me an x-ray, and then they said you need to have a scan. I thought that they meant there and then. They gave me an appointment for 6 weeks hence. And I said, I've got money in my pocket, by the grace of God. If I paid you, can you do it quicker? They said you could have it this afternoon if you paid us. Of course, I had no intention of paying because I'm against that on principle. But it shows you the kind of health service that we now have in this country. Secondly, it needs more money, not less. And both parties, Labour and the Conservatives, have both signed up, went through the same lobby in the House together, with me voting against it lonely in the other lobby, to cut another £30 billion of public expenditure. And much of that will fall in the field of social care. So although they say they're ring-fencing the health service, they're very far from ring-fencing social care, which is an integral part of any health system. And that social care is being butchered. In Bradford, there's an £8 million cut. There's been £270 million cut off the budgets in public services in Bradford over the last 5 years. We say there's no need for austerity. There's no need for cuts. If we stop the wars, if we scrap the nuclear weapons, and if we tax the richest people and corporations who are avoiding and evading tax, not only would there be no need for cuts, we could have better public services, not worse.
One question on the immigration. There are many European people migrated to Britain and taken so many jobs in Britain. And another question is that the people from other countries like Pakistan, India, have to show their income of 18,600 to get their spouse over to this country. What is your policy?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because that's one of my 6 conditions. And when Ed Miliband calls me next weekend, inshallah, he will ask me to support him. And one of my 6 conditions is that he must scrap this £18,600 limit. A Slovakian living in Bradford can come here. He can bring his wife. He can bring 10 wives. And none of them have to speak a word of English. None of them have to sit an English test. And he doesn't have to show any income at all. While someone from Pakistan is told by the government, imagine, that he cannot marry the person of his choice unless he can prove £18,600 worth of income, which in some parts of the country is much easier to do than others. In Bradford, it happens to be very difficult. You have to prove it on your tax records, your bank records, your employer's accounts that you are being paid £18,600 a year. And much of my caseload, I've had 4,000 individuals have come through my surgery over the last 3 years, 127 surgeries out of 156 Saturdays I've sat. And much of my caseload is immigration, and much of that is about this subject. So we'll have to scrap it because it's discriminatory against people from the subcontinent and against poor people. And therefore it's doubly discriminatory, and you'll have to scrap it. I welcome immigrants. I'm an immigrant. My family came to Scotland from Ireland. I emigrated to London. I emigrated from London to Bradford. You emigrated from Pakistan to England. That's how the world works. Immigrants work harder than anybody else. That's the immigrant story everywhere. But I cannot accept that Eastern European, Central European immigrants can be treated more favorably than immigrants from countries that Britain robbed for centuries and whose people defended Britain in 2 world wars. I can't accept that they're the poor relations, not at all.
Okay, I think Nisar Naqvi have a question, and then we'll go to Arshad Ali.
I just want to ask, some times ago, you were very, keen for liberation organization for the Kashmir.
Yes.
What's your stance at the moment now as a party leader?
Well, the earliest available YouTube video of me is from Muzaffarabad in 1989. I look very much younger and sound very different, very much more Scottish. But you'll understand if you watch that video how long I've been fighting for the Kashmir cause. My position is clear, that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have a right of self-determination. They need a plebiscite, a referendum, putting an X on a piece of paper. It's not asking for much. Scotland had it last year. It's good enough for Scotland. It's good enough for Jammu and Kashmir. What the people do with that right is their business. I have no view. Well, I do have a view, but it's not my business, so I won't express it on what the people of Jammu and Kashmir should decide. I'm only fighting for their right to decide it. And the United Nations, no less, Security Council, no less, a unanimous decision accepted by Mr. Nehru, the greatest of all the Indian leaders, accepted the right of self-determination, accepted the right for a plebiscite, but have denied it. Successive Indian governments have denied it. I'm banned from India. I'm not allowed to go anywhere in India unless I sign a declaration that I will not say a word about the Kashmir question. In fact, they kept my passport, kept the £90 just a few months ago when I was supposed to go to Goa to speak at a conference. So I can't reach the people in the occupied land, but I'm a frequent visitor to Azad Kashmir, and I have many friends, and I represent many people from there here in Bradford.
Right. The other question about the Saudi invasion in Yemen. What do you say about that?
Well, Yemen is a very important country for me. I love it very much. I'm very close to it. And the people of Yemen are in my heart. And so to see them being bombarded by an Arab, Muslim government, air force, slaughtered in large numbers is completely unconscionable. This is a civil war in Yemen. It has nothing to do with Sunni and Shia. This is a civil war in which the former president, or the immediate past president, the 33-year president of Yemen, and allies, which include Ansarullah, the so-called Houthi rebellion. This is on one side, and the loyalists of the immediate past president are fighting each other. It's never a good idea to interfere in other people's civil wars. It never leads to anything good. And it's even worse when you try and use that conflict, which has nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with sex. It has everything to do with a power struggle inside the country. And you better let other people choose their own governments. And if there's a revolution in a country, you better let it work its way through. Because the last thing that you can do that will make any useful contribution is to start bombing and killing people. I was bombed, you know, in Ethiopia, Eritrea in 1985. I lay with my face in the dirt trying to press myself into the ground as bombs were exploding with fragmentation spinning everywhere all around me. It was the most horrific experience. I still have nightmares about it. And when I got to my feet, 7 children were dead. I was with an ITN crew. They filmed it, showed it on the British news. Ever since then, I've had an enormous fear and loathing of aerial bombardment, which is totally indiscriminate. They talk about targeted weapons and precision guidance systems and all the rest. But we've seen the children in Yemen. We've seen them torn to pieces. And that's what happens when you start bombing other people.
Right. My last question to you. I seen you on Press TV, which is taken up from the sky, from the UK and Europe, I think. If you come back in your office, will you do something to back him on?
Well, actually, I present 3 television programs once a week on Press TV. I'm still there. Yeah. Even though we're off the Sky platform, we're still speaking to the world. This is a very popular program, the most widely watched on Press TV. I have a weekly show on RT, Russia Today, the fastest growing television station in the world. And I have a twice monthly show on Al Mayadeen television, which comes from Beirut, and I make the show in London. And I say to all 3, as I would say to the BBC or Sky, if they want to give me a show, I'll take a show, I'll present a show, but don't tell me what to say, and don't tell me what not to say, because I can't accept that from anyone. And these 3 stations have never once attempted to influence me in what I say on the issues. I say what I believe, I say what I mean what I say. But the act of taking Press TV off the Sky platform was a political act of sabotage, coming from the people who tell us over and over again how much they love freedom of speech. You can freely insult the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the name of freedom of speech. But if you speak on Press TV in a way that they don't like, they'll take you off. And this makes a mockery of the hypocrisy of these powers. Now that the situation with Iran is calming down a little bit, international relations are improving, diplomatic relations have been reinstated between Britain and Iran, I'm confident that Press TV will be back on the Sky platform before very long, because the technical excuse for taking us off was bogus. They took us off for political reasons.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We have Ashad Ali said quietly. मैं चाहूँगा कि आप उर्दू में ज़रा समराइज करें जो जॉर्ज गैलोवे ने अपनी पार्टी के जो कंस्टिट्यूंसी के बारे में जो बताया उसको आप उर्दू में किस तरह बताएंगे?
ठीक है। 3 साल पहले जो यहाँ बाई इलेक्शन हुआ था, उससे पहले आप जानते हैं कि यहाँ लेबर की 40 साल से भी ज़्यादा जो है ये सीट कंफर्म थी और पक्की थी। तो एक इलेक्शन बाई इलेक्शन की बारी आई तो एक अल्लाह की तरफ से या कुछ ब्रेडफोर्ड वेस्ट के जो लोग हैं उन्होंने महसूस किया कि एक ऐसा मौका है जो हमें हाथ से छोड़ना नहीं चाहिए, क्योंकि बार बार ऐसे मौके नहीं आते हैं कि कोई ऐसा आदमी आए जो एक वर्ल्ड क्लास पॉलिटिशियन हो, जो हर मौजू पर बात कर सकता हो। आपने कश्मीर का मेंशन किया है, आप शायद ये नहीं जानते हैं कि हिलाल कायद आज़म भी इनको मिला हुआ है, हिलाल पाकिस्तान भी इनको मिला हुआ है। इनकी सर्विसेज जो पाकिस्तान के लिए हैं, जो कश्मीर के लिए हैं, उनको रिकग्नाइज़ किया गया है। तो वो तो 40 साल से पहले करते रहे हैं, इसलिए नहीं कर रहे हैं कि आज ये ब्रेडफोर्ड के MP हैं, ये तो 40 साल से कर रहे हैं पहले से।
कॉल लेते हैं फिर बात जारी रखें जी। अस्सलाम वालेकुम। वालेकुम नकीब साहब ब्रेक का टाइम हो गया, अगर आप ब्रेक के बाद कर लें तो बात में मेहरबानी होगी, शुक्रिया आपका जी। नाजरीन ब्रेक का वक्त हो गया है, हम चाहेंगे कि एक मुख्तसर सी ब्रेक करें और ब्रेक के बाद दोबारा आपकी खिदमत में हाजिर होते हैं, फिर आप कॉल भी कर सकते हैं। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, मिलते हैं ब्रेक के बाद।